And as I sat there and I thought about the beliefs that were underneath this devastation, underneath this heartbreak, I asked myself, okay, are these things that I am thinking, are these beliefs that I am believing that are triggering this heartbreak, are they the actual truth?
Welcome to Breakthrough Mode, the podcast where we intentionally get into the driver's seat of our lives, shift out of monotony and mediocrity, and step on the gas towards becoming the person we were always meant to become.
Hello, and welcome to Wednesday in the Wild on the Breakthrough Mode podcast. I am your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining me today and pushing play on today's episode. So, just in case you're new here, or you haven't heard a Wednesday in the Wild podcast, or you're watching it on YouTube and you're wondering why I'm in my car, our Wednesday in the Wild segment is all about taking personal development out of theory, out of the studio, and seeing what it looks like in real life, boots on the ground, living it, breathing it, trying to personally develop all along the way. Okay, so today I have an experience from my own life for you, as always. Okay, so last Friday I had this experience where something that I had worked on, poured my heart and soul into, did not turn out or work out, even to a fraction of the degree that I had hoped. And I honestly felt really heartbroken about it. I was disappointed. Disappointed isn't even enough of a word. I was devastated. I was heartbroken. And I've had this situation before where I have put in all this work, all this effort, all this care, all this intention, all this love. And the thing that I poured all of this into didn't work out how I was hoping. And every time this has happened, I know my pattern, right? So the thing happens, I feel how I feel, which is really sad, really heartbroken. I cry. I crawl into bed. I do as little as possible for a couple of days as I get over this heartbreak, right? And that's okay. That's been my pattern. And, it's just it's how I dealt with it in the past. I find the comfort of being in bed. I cry. I release the feelings. It's just been what I have done. So I felt this heartbreak on Friday. And at first, I tried to just move through it. I tried to do other things. And I was like, I don't know why I'm fighting this. I know how this goes for me. I know what I do next. And so I grabbed my notebook, totally intending on going upstairs, crawling into bed, writing through my feelings, crying through my feelings, and snuggling in until I had to go get the girls. That was my plan. So I went upstairs and I saw that the laundry needed changing. And so I threw my notebook on the bed and I'm crying all the while, right? I really truly feel heartbroken over this thing. And so I throw my notebook on the bed and I go into the laundry room to change out the laundry. And I'm crying so much that I can't even stand there and pull the towels out of the dryer and put them into the hamper. I sit on the ground to do this task. And as I sit on the ground, pulling the towels out of the dryer and putting them into the hamper, I was thinking about, if I crawl into bed, what I will leave undone for the day. Despite this disappointment, despite this heartbreak, if I choose to just crawl into bed and shut down, what will I leave undone for the day? And I realized that there were a couple of things that were important to me, that if I chose to crawl into bed, I knew that they would not get done and they were important to me. And I thought, okay, what am I believing about this experience? What am I believing about this thing that didn't go as I had hoped? I asked myself that question. And as I sat there on the ground analyzing this question for myself, I realized that I was believing, like one thing that didn't go well meant that it would never go well, or that I could never figure it out, or if this thing didn't work, then nothing would ever work, or, this failure means that I'm a failure. I was believing all of these really negative, kind of final things like, this is it, this is the end of the road, all of these really kind of final things. And as I sat there and I thought about the beliefs that were underneath this devastation, underneath this heartbreak, I asked myself, okay, are these things that I am thinking, are these beliefs that I am believing that are triggering this heartbreak, are they the actual truth? Am I just a failure? Is nothing ever going to work? Does this one thing not working mean that I'll never figure it out? Or does it just mean that this specific thing didn't work out the way I had wanted it to? And that there are still opportunities and possibilities out there where I can figure it out, where I can still create the thing that I want to create, where I can still have the thing that I was working towards all along. Does this mean that all of that is unavailable and doesn't exist? And I was like, well, no. All this actually means is that this one thing didn't work. Is that the way that I approached this one thing, or the way that I did this one thing, despite how much I put into it, this one thing didn't work out. It doesn't actually mean anything about other possibilities, about other ideas, about me as a person. It absolutely does not mean anything about me as a person. And when I got up from the floor to put the clothes from the washer into the dryer, all of these things are starting to collect in my head of like, no, this doesn't mean any of those final things. All it means is that this one thing didn't work out the way I had wanted it to. And there are still uncharted territory. There are still things for me to explore. There's still opportunity and possibility. And there are still ideas out there that I haven't even thought of yet that could create what I am trying to create here. So I put the clothes into the dryer, right? And instead of going into the room like I had intended, I left my notebook where it landed on the bed and I went downstairs and I did the thing that was important to me that I knew if I didn't do, then I wouldn't get it done. And I was able in that moment to put aside the heartbreak, the devastation, and do the thing that was important to me, even though I still felt that way. And I still felt those feelings. Even while I opened the door a crack for the possibilities, for other things working out, even though I opened that door a crack, I still felt how I was feeling and I still allowed that. Here is the big difference. I didn't crawl into bed for days. I actually never made it to bed. I never actually crawled into bed. Um, I went to bed that night, but that was it. And as I kind of reflected on this experience, I thought, okay, here was the real powerful thing. The real powerful thing was this was the turning point. Asking myself what I believed about the situation and about the experience. And then seeing what I was believing, seeing the beliefs that were driving the bus, I asked myself if those things were the absolute truth or if there were other possibilities, other ideas, other ways of seeing it, other ways of interpreting this situation. And of course, there were. But it wasn't until I asked myself if there were other ways of seeing things, other interpretations, other opportunities, other possibilities. It wasn't until I asked myself about that that I could even acknowledge that. So, first, ask yourself what you're believing about the situation, about the experience at hand. And then ask yourself if there's any other way to see it, any other interpretation, because there is. The interesting thing is that everything that happens in our lives in general are neutral events. They they are neither good nor bad. We categorize them as good or bad, and then we have feelings that fall in line with that categorization. I know people that categorize something like a trauma, like a real trauma, as one of their greatest blessings in life because of the things that followed after that trauma, because of the ways they grew, because of the way they saw the hand of God, because of the way they, the change in the trajectory of their life. They now see this thing that most people would classify as horrible as a real blessing in their life, a real gift that although it was hard to go through, I'm not saying that it was easy, although it was hard to go through, then created so much goodness in their life from that hardship. So if somebody can have a trauma in their life and then see and feel the blessings and the benefits after that and have gratitude for that hard thing in their life, then the thing itself is a neutral thing. And I would say that as we are on our journey, as we are on our growth path, we are very quick to categorize things as positive or negative. This is good, this is bad. And that quick categorization definitely impacts our feelings about the thing. If I had had that situation on Friday and thought, this is just an event, this doesn't mean anything about the future, this is just what happened with this one thing, and thought, oh, that's interesting, then I wouldn't have had a meltdown. But instead, I immediately thought, this means that I'm a failure and that everything I do is a failure. And I went down this like negative rabbit hole. That wasn't the actual ultimate truth. This was just a thing that happened. It was my categorizing it as like this ultimate failure that preceded the heartbreak. Now, the categorization is like a knee jerk reaction until you can train yourself otherwise, until you can see things at when you first encounter them as a neutral thing. Like, oh, this is just a thing that happened. That's interesting. I wonder what will come from it. I wonder what will happen. And that is so hard to do, which is definitely why this is a practice. And like I said at the very beginning, I have a pattern of something like this very specific situation. I have a pattern of this thing happening, and then I crawl into bed and I stay there as much as possible for the next 3 days. But I didn't do that this time because I was able to turn it around so quickly that I never actually made it to bed, even though I fully intended on getting there. But I decided to stop and change the laundry. And that choice to stop and change the laundry gave me enough space to ask myself some questions. What am I believing that's causing this heartbreak? And are those beliefs the ultimate truth? What if they're not? What if there are other things I could believe about this situation? What if there are other possibilities that I could be open to about this situation? What if that just means that this is how this went, but it actually has no prediction on how another thing will go? And once I could open that door, then the door was open and I couldn't just crawl back in bed. I couldn't because I knew that The beliefs that I had been leaning into were a choice, and I had now chosen to see it differently. And then that changed my emotional state enough to change my actions. I still felt down. I still didn't feel great, but I was able to change it enough to change my actions. And then by changing my actions, I was able to continue to crawl out of that. And of course, I felt really good about getting the thing done that I needed to get done, that I wanted to get done, that meant so much to me. I was able to get that thing done, and that felt good. And so then I was able to go on this more positive trajectory, although not as steep of an incline as the decline was. I was able to go on this positive trajectory. So, those are the questions that I have for you to ask yourself when something happens and you want to crawl into bed. Maybe crawl into bed. Ask yourself these questions from bed or whatever your pattern is. But know that it has the power to help you change things around. You have to be willing to question what you're believing underneath your emotions. The thing, because it's your beliefs about the thing that are triggering the emotions. And then ask yourself if those beliefs are the ultimate truth or if there's any other interpretations or possibilities out there, because there are, because there just are. That's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me today on our Wednesday in the Wild. I totally love you. Bye for now.